Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Trinity Thompson, and I am hosting today's special episode of Black Mental Health Matters. And today, in honor of Women's History Month, I definitely wanted to shed light on a topic that I think deserves more recognition. And I want to talk about the state of mental health of female practitioners today, because this is a very difficult field to navigate through the field of psychology, mental health, human services, social services, where you are in a field where you're constantly working with people and being inundated with traumas and experiences of other people. So I wanted to bring on two lovely guests today and talk about their experiences of navigating through this field, all while keeping their own mental health intact. So I will go ahead and present our two guests for today. First guest that we have today is Imani Dillon. She was a guest on the last episode that I hosted. And Imani, just go ahead and introduce yourself really quick for our new viewers.
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Imani. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I have a certification in systemic multicultural counseling. I reside in Durham, North Carolina. I am currently practicing with a caseload of about um, 20 to 25 clients a week, and I am happy to be here.
All right, our next guest is LaDawn Thompson, and she is from here in Connecticut. And I know that because this just so happens to be my mom. And I'm very honored to have her here as well. So, Miss Thompson, would you please introduce yourself?
Well, I think you just did. Not just Trinity's mom. I'm also a parent support specialist at the Village, which is a huge nonprofit organization here in Connecticut that services the Hartford, Connecticut community. Um, the position requires us to be a coaching support, parenting coaching for parents that get their children removed by the DCF, Department of Children and Family Services here. Children are removed, and programs like QPC, the program I work for, provide parents with parenting skills to in hopes for them to reunite with their children one day. I'm also a grad student at Bay Path University in Massachusetts. Um, I am hoping to get my master's degree in mental health counseling, and one day, like Imani, work in the field of family counseling and advocacy.
Yes, these are two women that I both aspire to be like. I will just go ahead and give myself a quick introduction. So, again, my name is Trinity Thompson. I'll be hosting today's episode. I currently work as a psychiatric technician for the Institute of Living, which is a division of Hartford Hospital. Hartford Healthcare is one of the major health care networks here in the state of Connecticut. So I definitely do enjoy working as a psychiatric technician on an inpatient unit, adult inpatient unit. I come this fall, I will be an MSW candidate at the University of St. Joseph. Last episode, where I talked about hopefully being in a graduate program, I am now officially going to be a part of the fall cohort of the University of St. Joseph social work program. So I'm very excited about that. And without further ado, let's just get straight into this episode. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the population. I wanted to highlight the different populations that that the three of us work for. So I'll go first. Again, I work as a psychiatric technician in the city of Hartford, Connecticut, and around the hospital, we serve a variety of different communities, but we do serve a majority of people of color. We serve adults. The hospital that I work for serves patients from ages 5 all the way up to 95. You know, we go from really young kids to older adults, but the population that I work with specifically is adults 18 to 65. And like I said, we have people of color, we have white people, we have black people, Hispanic people, we have homeless people, we have people that come from low and high socioeconomic status backgrounds. We serve people of the LGBTQ plus community. We serve people of all sorts of different religions, all sorts of backgrounds, different mental capabilities, you know, high functioning, low functioning. And, you know, we also serve people that are very calm, very relaxed. We serve highly aggressive people, very violent, you know, violent histories, violent backgrounds, very traumatic backgrounds. So it is a lot to take in. Um, so what kind of populations and communities do you guys work with?
Well, I'll start. I would say that I work in private practice. So, private practice versus community mental health, it's a very different type of population between the two. So, majority of the time, I see clients who are of middle social economic status. Most of them are parents or they're working class for sure. A lot of the population that I personally prefer to see are those clients of colors, mostly Black women. I see those in the LGBT community. I see Black men and anybody who is pretty much in the marginalized community, except for those who are of low SES. And that is just due to the insurance that our practice takes. And yeah, so we already know the big systemic issue when it comes to certain populations and insurance, but definitely see couples, Black and brown folks, those in the LGBT community, those who are disabled, and pretty much a wide variety of people in that aspect. Most people are not in crisis, again, because it's private practice. So we're seeing people who are coming more so for anxiety, depression, maybe light substance abuse struggles, ADHD. So those things that are manageable in outpatient and not necessarily in intensive outpatient or inpatient facility.
I guess I'll go next. I think after listening to the way the two of you describe the patients and the clients that you do see, I'm probably a mixture of both. Some the patients that we do see could be single parent households. It could be two parent households. It is the community varies. The race varies. We do see white clients, black clients, Hispanic clients, um, Jewish clients, clients of all different um, races, mostly lower socioeconomic families with substance abuse, mental health issues, mental health disorders. We don't normally have parents that are um, individuals that are, you know, acting erratically or anything like that. They usually come to us, have already gone through the DCF system, working with the social worker, knowing what to expect from our program, knowing what's expected of them from our program. We don't allow people to come to the program if they're under the influence. We have to. Our number one concern is to keep the children safe. I'm always rooting for my parents. So whether they have mental health issues, disorders, or substance abuse issues or disorders, I'm always rooting for them because every step they take towards the program is a positive step in the direction of getting their families back together. So we're always looking at the positive and not judging our families based on the baggage they walk through the door with. So we desperately try to lower a lot of the barriers that they have coming through the doors and the expectations because they expect us to be a social worker or they expect us to be the system or the legal system. And we do our best to prove to them that we're trustworthy and that we are not the system and that we are not judging them based on their past or their present indiscretions or inabilities.
Right. And I think that like something that's also really important is that I wouldn't be surprised if some of the patients that I've seen, also go into the QPC program, trying to be reunited with their kids, because the first step is always working on your own issues, so that way you can get back to being able to care for your children because you have been able to care for yourself. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the adults that I've worked with or the patients that I've seen come and go, or have even have been clients at the IOL, be it an inpatient or outpatient program, that have also been affiliated with the QPC program, in order to reunite with their kids. So I think that I definitely applaud and appreciate and respect the fact that a lot of the patients that I get to sit down and like talk with, and when I hear their stories and I listen to their stories about their traumas and the things that they go through on a daily basis, and how the systems might have, or the judicial system might have gotten involved as far as like the children and everything that they care for at home, being able to take that first step. And I always sit down and talk to them, and they're so fixated on being able to reunite with their kids that they forget where they are. And I try to bring them back to the present. Like, that is definitely a great goal, to be reunited with your kids and be able to care for them. But you're here for a reason. You're going to get the help that you need, so that way you can be able to go back out into the world, transition out into the community, and be able to do what you need to do for whoever it is that you're providing for at home. Yeah. And I would also assume that there are very similar systems in North Carolina with the patients that you work with, or the clients that you work with, Imani. If at some point they were inpatient at a hospital, or they're in outpatient, day treatment programs. So I think it was important for me to highlight the populations that we work with on a daily basis, because it can be very taxing for us to take on the experiences of our clients, and being open to giving ourselves and offering ourselves in that way, for people to be vulnerable and to lean on us for emotional and that psychological and that mental support that they need. It can be very taxing on us. So I wanted to go into burnout and causes of burnout, because it's definitely something that happens. I want to say to at least maybe everybody at least once at some point in their careers. And I think that with us working in the field of human services, social services, psychology, mental health, that with us, again, being so open to hearing these experiences, be it like traumatic, people in crisis or people not in crisis, just kind of dealing with like everyday stressors, it can take a toll on us indirectly or and directly. So I wanted to go ahead and give some statistics for our viewers today. That first, 78% of Black women report that they rarely have energy at the end of the workday. And this is coming from a research called Black Women Thriving. And due to that, 88%, so this is way over, like the majority line, 88% of Black women have or will experience a burnout. And this is just for like across the board. So this is not any specific statistic, like as far as female practitioners. This is just for across the board for all kinds of careers. But I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of these women work in like the healthcare field or the human social services field. So what do you guys think about these statistics? Like, do you think that you definitely would consider yourself like a part of this number?
I don't think that I'm a part of this number. That those numbers are high. Yeah. And I understand why they would be high. As Black women, we take on a lot. I mean, we're the superheroes of most of our families, and you take on that superwoman syndrome, and we try to solve a lot of problems. We are the go-to end all for friends, for families. At the end of the day, I always ask myself, we're taking care of so many, not just our clients, but at home too, in our communities. Who takes care of us is always my biggest question. And generationally, and I speak for my mom and the women before her and my aunts, they're not taught to talk about their feelings. They're taught and they're conditioned to just react, and to suppress. Keep your feelings to yourself, handle it. And they tend to go to the women, the older generations. They seek counseling, so to speak, pastors, friends, siblings, but never any professional help. They don't even acknowledge that they need professional help. As far as burnout is concerned, I don't feel like I'm a part of those numbers, only because I'm in the mental health field, and I am aware of, if I do not take care of myself mentally, I will be a part of those statistics. I'm in therapy, and that's not something that my older generations, I don't come from family members that believe in seeing therapists and doing something about your mental health or taking care of your mental health. So doing that, Trinity can tell you, we talk a lot about the things that are going on day to day. I have another older daughter that I talk to, and it's communication, and being able to turn it off at the end of the day, which is easier said than done, because I work with families that have situations that would turn your stomach. It would have you going through some sleepless nights. And I always said, for me, the key to being able to, so far, because I don't know what the future holds for me, but so far I'm able to separate and to turn it off a little bit at the end of the day, because I have lived through so much. I've had family members that have had children taken away. I've had friends that have been in and out of the system. I'm aware of what the system can do to people emotionally, mentally, and physically. And having that awareness and knowing that there's so many different places that you can go, and so many different support systems that are set up to actually help you, it's all about trusting and helping another person build that trust to be able to reach out when they need help.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point, Ms. Thompson. I think the main thing is knowing when you need help. And a lot of times we as Black women, we're just taught, oh, keep going. And nobody talks about that intersectionality of being Black and that intersectionality of being a woman. I don't know where Ms. Thompson went. I hope she can get back soon.
Yeah, hopefully she'll be able to join again soon.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, while she, gets her, I'll just go ahead and do this really quick. Okay. Yeah. Well, until she joins again. I definitely agree with that. It's definitely like taxing to kind of like take that on, and it is something that is hard to like turn on and turn off. And we will definitely get deeper into that conversation a little bit later.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I think like something that like I don't think I've experienced like a true burnout yet, but I know that when I work at the hospital and I'm scheduled to work like a few days like in a row, and I work second shift, so I work from 3 to 11:30. It's a little bit tougher because the doctors and the clinicians are not there after hours, obviously. They don't get to kind of see what the issue is, or issues that kind of arise between the time that they leave around like 3:00 in the afternoon until the next day, like the next morning, 8 a.m. when they come back in.
Yeah.
And so we kind of have to like make up for that. We as psychiatric technicians and the nursing staff, we kind of have to keep the situation kind of under control. And that's a lot of the times when things kind of get like a little bit chaotic on the unit. Here she goes. I think she's back in.
Yeah.
There we go.
Welcome back.
My battery died. I'm so sorry.
No, you're all good.
That's okay. I was just telling Imani and our viewers that how I talk to you about, it's hard when after hours when the doctors leave, up until the next morning when they come back. That's when like a lot of like our situations are more chaotic and our more violent and aggressive situations end up unfortunately happening is between those hours, like after hours when the doctors leave. And by the time that I get home at night at 11:30 at night, I'm so overstimulated, I'm wired up from being, in this particular environment for the last 8.5 hours or 8 hours, sorry. And sometimes it's hard to kind of leave that. And I think that because this is my first job out of college, with working in this field, it definitely kind of like was not culture shock, but I guess I will say like in because I can't think of a better term, it kind of is culture shock because I didn't know the types of things like in how severe mental health can like actually be. I didn't, understand until I saw it with my own eyes. People, and this is just speaking broadly, this isn't any specific situation, but I've experienced this before, patients being upset or maybe in a psychotic episode or in the midst of like a crisis and getting frustrated because they're not getting answers, patients becoming violent, flipping tables, attacking staff physically or verbally abusing staff, emotionally abusing staff, manipulating, things like that. It was very hard to kind of become accustomed to that environment at first. But after a while, I kind of like became, I adjusted to it. I'm not going to say I'm used to it because there are still things, I've only been there for a little bit over a year, but there are still things that, I'm getting adjusted to, but I have adjusted to being kind of prepared and like that feeling of always kind of being on guard. Like it has definitely impacted my anxiety a little bit. Just again, having to come home around midnight and not being able to kind of like turn that switch off. So it actually brings me to my next point of like mental health effects of burnout. So I definitely wanted to highlight things that can be a result of burnout, which is depression, obviously, anxiety, difficulty focusing, difficulty sleeping, increased irritability, fatigue, and amongst, countless physical complications, with Black women being treated at a disproportionate or being treated with a disadvantage in the healthcare field as like just in general. I think burnout definitely is something that we have to be always like on our lookout for. We can't ignore it because what is happening physically can manifest mentally and vice versa. So, have you ever like experienced any like mental health like effects like from a burnout or just like in general like from your job? Like, have you noticed like you've been a little bit more anxious or like a little bit on edge or feeling like you always kind of have to like be on guard? Like, what are some of your experiences?
Yeah, I don't think currently at the job that I'm at now that I have experienced burnout, but also I'm very intentional about my self-care. And so I like to think of it like this. If you're burnt out, that means you're not taking care of yourself the way that you need. So I definitely think that all of those things are possible. Anxiety, and even if you're on autopilot, just going, you're not even thinking about it. Your days are mixing in together. I'm like, okay, have you taken a break? How are you taking care of yourself? Are you just pouring out of your cup and not refilling your cup? So I always ask myself those questions currently. But when I was in grad school, oh, your girl was burnt out. I was burnt out. I was working. I was doing internship. I was going to classes. And I was doing everything in one space. So it got to the point where it was affecting my sleep. Oh, I was eating and sleeping and working and doing internship all in one area. And that was just terrible. I'm like, girl, go outside, go to the library, go somewhere. Of course, this is hindsight. I'm looking at it now. But if I would have took the time to be more intentional about how I took care of myself and my self-care, then it would have definitely negated the effects of burnout or just feeling like I'm pouring out and I'm not getting anything in return. So self-care is number one right now in my life. And that can look a whole bunch of different ways. I always tell my clients and I tell myself that I need a toolbox. So it's not just going to be one tool that I use for the rest of my life that's going to work. It may be one tool works for this thing, another tool works for another thing. You got this one constant that works on majority of things, but I like to switch it out sometimes. So the one that I do try to do at least multiple times a week is going to the gym. At first, started going to the gym. Of course, you want your summer body, etc. But then I was going because it helps set the tone for my day. I'm able to get out frustrations. I'm able to clear my mind. I'm able to move out any of the anxiety or just stress of the day. I'm able to move it out. And then the next big thing, that's something I do every day, whether I'm clean or not, is shower. Just a good shower. You not thinking about nobody else. You're literally, your shower is you in that water, and you just feeling, washing your day away. And I like to excuse me, I also like to be mindful with it. So, okay, I'm washing away my stress. I'm washing away the day, things like that. Just little things, little self-care tools that you can quickly to help yourself get through whatever you're feeling and help fuel yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all great things to be able to do, to have self-care and to be mindful of your stress and some of the things that you're juggling all at one time, and to prioritize a lot of things. That is key, being able to prioritize. And I can understand what you were saying as far as being in grad school and working and doing an internship. I haven't started my internship yet because I'm still in the first year of grad school. That comes for mental health counseling. That comes in the second year of my program. But it does get overwhelming. And I found myself working while you're working full time and going to grad school and have a family, like I have to turn the computer off. I force myself literally to turn it off. And then guilt sets in. And that's all a part of, your mental health and anxiety, and when your mind doesn't shut off. So what I try to do is, when I'm shutting off the computer, I'm telling myself, like you're showering, saying, I'm washing away, I'm telling myself, I'm shutting off school right now. I'm shutting off work and the reports that are due for work, because, it just doesn't stop with seeing clients and seeing families. You still have the paperwork to do. We've got families that come to us with, like I was saying earlier, with so many different issues. And when you've heard stories like a baby was taken away because they showed up at the emergency room and they've got like 12 broken bones and a stent has to be put in the brain to alleviate the fluid that now it's got to run down into their stomach. These are horrific stories that you deal with every day. And then you try to figure out, like, how do I turn that off? How do I not think about these families and these babies and these children when you get home? So one thing I like to do is say a little prayer for these families and these individuals, and then let go and let God. And that's tough to do. That takes some experience, letting go and letting God.
Yeah.
These children and these families are in dire straits because of somebody's behavior. And they've got to come to terms with those behaviors. And a part of burnout that I've watched coworkers happen to different coworkers is that they want it more than these families want it, than these parents want it.
Yes.
Taking on that burden of wanting something more than these families want for themselves or these individuals want for themselves can cause a huge amount of stress on you and easily catapult you to burnout. Yes. It's funny that you were talking about grad school and working in the same space as internship. I have a coworker she's relatively young. She's a little bit older than Trinity. She's in her first year of grad school for MSW, and she's doing an internship and she's working full time. And when I do see her a couple of days a week, and I think what helps for me, I don't work in the office every single day. That's a huge help. I don't work in the office every day, and there's a lot of stuff I can do from home. which is very helpful and great for self-care. And being able to separate yourself from the insanity that goes on at work. But she is at that point where she's like a boiling pot.
Mm-hmm.
She's talking about assignments that are due. She's talking about how am I supposed to do this internship and be there for this meeting for my internship and be able to work and be there for my clients. And how do I juggle all that? And how do I have a personal life? Like I have no time to myself.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I noticed that she's been doing lately is she's been planning trips throughout the year. So we are in March and she's already taken a weekend off to go to a spa with a girlfriend in New Jersey. She has a trip coming up late summer where she wants to put some stamps on her passport. So it's important for her, and everybody has their own way of coping.
Yeah.
I don't think I have a whole lot of time right now to really get away because of the classes. And if I want to finish by my goal date, I'm going to have to go semester, and not take off any breaks in between. We're not talking 5 years. We're only talking like the next year and a half, but still it's going to be tough for me. And I'm going to have to reach out to you, Imani, and get some pointers into how to cope with some things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One big thing that I tell everybody, especially my clients, is you have to give yourself something to look forward to, especially if you're at a place where you can't see yourself having any type of breaks. I know that when I was in grad school, we didn't have a break, especially when we had internship. You know, the first semester we had a summer break like everybody else, but that second semester or that second year that we had, oh, it was internship in school, and we had to go the whole way through. And I'm like, what am I giving myself to look forward to? Because thinking about going from May to May or May to August, I mean, May, let's just say May 2020 to August 2021 with no breaks sounds insane to me. I don't know about y'all, but that sounds, woo, that's a lot.
Even when I said it just now, it sounded insane. But
yes. And it's just like, okay, we got to get through it. We have our big goals, but what are we going to do to reach our big goals by doing little things for ourselves? So it was, okay, well, let me schedule a weekend to go and visit my family. Let me go and just use the rest of my evening to go to a restaurant that I like. I found some Indian places. Shout out to Mint in Boone, North Carolina. I was going there. Burger joints, things that made me feel good that I can look forward to. Whoo, I had a stressful day today, but I know I'm going to Ben and Jerry's tonight, so I'm gonna be all right.
Yeah.
So things like that, just giving yourself something to look forward to so your days don't seem so clumped together.
Yeah.
Because that burnout is going to come so quickly if we don't have those things to help alleviate the stress that we're feeling on a daily basis, especially when taking on clientele who has just the most terrible situations happening to them. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, how am I supposed to help you be successful? And I can barely help myself.
Right.
Exactly. And just to really quick, Trinity, just to piggyback off of that, just being present as a parent and being a parent for a long time, it's important. It's important that you be present in your own life. And that's part of self-care too.
Yeah.
Taking that moment out and, like you said, even going to Ben and Jerry's or having some great Indian food, that is being present in the moment and enjoying that. And if you're present in the moment, you are not having anxiety. You're not stressed out about the outside influences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely I can agree with all of this. You know, I think that, like, especially like with you, like being a parent, mom, being a parent, and then it's like your life consists of, like, your day-to-day life consists of school and work, and then like outside of that, like being a parent to us, I think it helps, like with you, with the three of us being older. My younger sister is in school right now, so she's not here on a day-to-day, she's away, but you know, still showing up and being there as a parent definitely is always like intertwined in like your day-to-day life. But again, like it helps because we're older and we're independent versus, with us being, I think it'd definitely be like a lot harder if you were on your educational journey and working while we were younger.
Mhm.
So I know that that time, when we went to South Carolina last month, that definitely was like a nice like uh even though it was a few days, it was something to look forward to, something to get away, something to look forward to, like, being with family, even though, we were down there for to do a few things. Being able to like enjoy the presence of our family was definitely fun. I personally, I love to travel as well. If it's like we're going on a day trip, if we're going to go run some errands, or like I'm booking flights and like going out of town, going back to Atlanta to visit some of my friends from school, which I'll be doing next month. Like that, that's the type of stuff that like has me looking forward to something. So it's like I don't feel like I'm working myself to death, or always looking at the schedule like, well, when am I working next? When am I working next? Like, oh, I'm working 3, 4 days in a row. And I think that it's super important that like I've come to a point where I've realized that working 4 days in a row is not in the field, in the specific position that I'm working. It's not something that I'm always comfortable with. So I do have the flexibility of like being able to move my schedule around. So that definitely helps like with my mental being able to, switch shifts with coworkers. So it's like, maybe if I do work these three, or maybe if I decide to do the whole stretch, at least I know I'll have those 3 days off. So what can I occupy my time with on those 3 days off that will cater to me and my self-care needs, and like kind of like, recharging, pouring the juice back into my cup. What can I do that will make myself happy in these days? So that way, by the time I go back to work, I can go back with like a fresh perspective, new mindset. We're going to get this done. We're going to knock this out. And then, we'll have the, few days on, few days off, maybe a day on, day off, day on, day off type of thing like that. So, yeah, I think that, especially with you being in Imani, you have already gone through the journey of grad school, mom, with you being in grad school, and then with me starting grad school in the fall. I definitely look forward to disciplining myself to make sure that, my priorities are in line, but also disciplining myself to know when do I need to back off on myself and not put so much pressure on myself, because I did do that in college, and I did struggle because of that significantly with my own mental health, always constantly pushing myself to like be the best, be the best, be the best. And it's okay to want for yourself to do better and to show up for yourself. And just want the best for yourself, but also to know that with that comes with wanting the best for yourself comes wanting the best for like your health, and not putting yourself in a position where you're going to be burnt out week after week after week, and to the point where you feel like you have to give up because you didn't tend to yourself or cater to yourself in the way that you needed beforehand. So I did want to talk about some of the causes of burnouts, which I did a little bit of research on and I thought was interesting. So where did I write this at? Sorry, I have my notes. So I did find a few different reasons for the causes of burnout, and one of them was code switching. So with that came a very shocking statistic that I saw, which was, and this is from the same Black Women Thriving research, was that 72% of Black women engage in code switching at work. And so I feel like within this field, I know that we all talked about dealing with communities of color. There still is different levels of code switching, because not every client, just because they look like you, can be able to relate to you. So I feel like there are times I definitely catch myself engaging in code switching, to be able to kind of understand like another client's perspective, or to be able to communicate with them in a way that they would understand. Um, so I want to get back to code switching, but I'm going to list the other ones really quick. So code switching, listening to trauma stories, days on end, listening, taking in like different clients, with at the hospital with admissions, having to kind of go through like the whole background of like the stories that their experiences, like the backgrounds that they come from, having to constantly take that in, being inundated with that. with listening to like those experiences. Like I mentioned before, dealing with clients with violent histories or violent tendencies, clients that might have triggers that we don't necessarily know that, we are activating those triggers. And, all of a sudden, they might flip up a table. And the next thing I know, I'm getting hit in the face. Hasn't happened to me, but, it has happened before.
Yeah.
Abuse, physical abuse from clients or patients, in my sense, emotional abuse, verbal abuse. People can get pretty nasty. We know that when they are hearing things that they might not want to hear. So I think that is a lot. And then lack of support or mistreatment from, your coworkers, your staff, or management. And with that, I found a statistic that says only 41% of Black women report trusting their coworkers will stand up for what is right. So, what are your opinions about like some of the causes of burnouts?
I definitely agree with code switching.
Yeah. It could be tiresome.
I mean, just an environment where you can't be yourself, anywhere where you can't be yourself I know there's a level of professionalism that we have to have.
Right.
So if there's a level of code switching that we need to do because of that professionalism. But on top of the professionalism, where you can't be yourself, you have to talk differently. You have to dress differently. You have to wear your hair differently. You have to talk about topics that you really don't care about, but you want to engage in because that's how you're going to fit in, or that's how you're going to be accepted by your coworkers. That is exhausting. I mean, just talking about that right now is exhausting, but having to show up every single day because you have to, or because this is your responsibility, and you can't be yourself, and you can't talk about what you want to talk about, that just sounds exhausting already. And so I definitely agree that is a cause of burnout. I'm also thinking about, yes, having to hear the same stories from multiple different people over and over and over again and hear how they're struggling. And yes, we're there to support, but also hearing those same stories that maybe there's a specific time period of life that I haven't gone through yet, but I have multiple clients talking about how difficult that time period of life is. Now I have to be like, wow, is that something that I'm going to have to go through? Can I do this differently? How am I going to go through it without suffering or struggling in the same way that my clients are suffering or struggling? And it's just like, okay, let me turn that off. But sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to turn it off. We're human.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I do really quick want to like bounce off of that idea, because I think that sometimes within like this field, people forget, or like the clients and the populations that we serve, like our clients tend to, and even though they're not here to hear our problems, we are being paid. This is our profession to hear, to listen to them and cater to them. I think that sometimes it is forgotten that we are people too, and sometimes people's traumas and things like they go through, like when they come in and they share it with us, and like you said, constantly hearing like the same stories or even worse stories, things that you thought like could never happen, like it would only happen like in the movies, might trigger some of the things that we've been through, because again, we are people too. So I know like when I hear like patients like just hopeless, depressed, or like when I see us like certain populations that I definitely can relate to, like when younger adults come to our unit. So let's say like maybe a college student and they're depressed, they just want to make their parents proud, or and they're feeling depressed, they're feeling really anxious. I can relate to that because at one point I was in that same space. So, and I feel blessed because like I'm healing and I'm actively in therapy like for that. But sometimes like it does bring me back to a place where it's like, dang, I remember when I was just like that. And you do have to keep a certain level of professionalism, and you can't, it's not really professional to counter transfer and talk about, yeah, like I've been through that too. I do sometimes, like I pick and choose when I want to share my personal experiences, with clients, and tell them, like I definitely understand what you're going through from like a personal background, just so that way they feel like they're not alone. But there are times where it's like, maybe a coworker that used to get abused when they were little, get or abused in a certain way when they were little, might get abused the same way by like a patient, and like that might trigger something, and then all of a sudden the next thing you know, a coworker goes off and they go off the deep end, and then like, you know, that brings in like a whole separate like conversation of like, well, how do we deal with this person? Because again, I feel like sometimes it's forgotten that we're people too. We deal with things, and it's almost like ironic about like ask, or like you almost feel awkward like asking or calling in to the unit to call out for a mental health day, because it's like, we need you here because these people are having a mental health day. But
Yeah.
I need one too. So I
Yeah.
learned that it's definitely good. Like, I learned to not feel shame in calling out for a mental health day, because they get it. They do get it. But you know, sometimes it's like, well, we do need you to show up. And it's like, well, do I put myself first or do I put my job first? Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there, but I definitely wanted to let you know that like I definitely understood that.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to code switching, I can see how unbelievably stressful and taxing, and I mean it can take a lot of energy out of you to constantly switch to be this person in this environment, that your behaviors, your thought process, your communication, your language, everything changes so that you can fit into these different environments. um, it's not something that I normally do. Trinity can tell you I'm pretty much the same person at work, at home. That's one thing I try to do, is stay true to who I am and be the real, and show up as the real me all the time. No one can catch me at the grocery store or at the club, not at the club, just being completely a different person than the person that they know me in any environment. Do you have to have a certain professional behavior when you're at work and dealing with patients? Absolutely. Does your language have to change when you're dealing with patients and clients and families? Absolutely. There are some things that you can't say that can um, be discriminating or can be labeling towards clients and families and patients and stuff. So it can be a cause of burnout for a lot of people if you can't figure out how to navigate your behavior when you're in certain environments. Um, the other thing I wanted to mention that I've seen through my coworkers that can be a major cause of burnout for them is multicultural competence, or just being culturally competent. You need to be aware of your client's culture, their beliefs, their traditions. You have to respect those things. You have to try to turn these things that situations and communications that you don't necessarily agree with, turn it into an educational moment where you have the opportunity to learn something about something else. Um, I have so many, because I'm a woman of a particular age. I have lots of experiences, and they may not be personal ones. They may just be things that I've witnessed in the past, people that I've known. But recently, there was a situation where one of my coworkers, I was telling Trinity about this. Her family happens to be an African family. She is West Indian, and dad was not behaving in a gentleman-like fashion, in her opinion. He wasn't holding the door for his wife when they walked in. He would walk in ahead of her, and she's walking in behind him, holding all the bags. And he would literally walk through one door and another door and close the door behind him, knowing that his wife is still coming in. And the coach, because we're called coaches in our program, she had such an issue with this. So we do have groups of supervision, which is in individual supervision, which is another good way to avoid burnout. Um, and during a group supervision, she's telling us about this family and this experience that she's having, and she was very upset. Like, she was really upset about this dad's behavior. And I thought to myself, I happened to be not feeling well that particular day. So for me, I'm usually very verbal. I couldn't speak. And maybe it was for the best, And so I sat back and I was able to listen to everybody's opinion. We watch behavior a lot. We observe behavior a lot when it comes to our family. So you become accustomed to just watching behaviors of everyone around you. And in her physical behavior, in her speech, and how passionate she was about telling this dad, listen, you need to get it together because you're treating your wife like she was really, really angry about it. And I'm thinking, you're going to burn yourself out if you allow these situations to affect you in this way. You're taking too much home. This cannot possibly be, I'm thinking, this can't possibly be what you're so concerned about. But you said something interesting earlier, Imani, just kind of putting yourself in another person's shoes and trying to see things from their perspective. So I was trying to see things from dad's perspective and from my coworker's perspective and her culture. She's used to things being a certain way. In my culture, I'm used to things being a certain way. This gentleman, he's African. He's used to being a little bit more dominant in his family, things being a certain way, treating women a certain way. And to me, it was an opportunity for us all to learn something. So my advice to her the next time I talked to her was just to talk to this dad first, because she wanted to go straight to mom and be like, listen, why do you why do you do this? That's not what we're here for. We're here to make sure these children are safe and to offer these parents some parenting skills, which his behavior didn't really have anything to do with these children not being safe and parenting skills. However, there's always a gray area in our jobs and in our responsibilities. And this was one of those areas where she felt like it could interfere because this behavior, their children are watching this behavior and it could be passed on. And so my advice to her was to have a conversation with dad so she could try to understand his perspective. Long story short, she did. He had no idea he was doing that. He was just like, are you kidding me? I had no idea. How long was I doing that? Like, he was sincere. Like, he had no idea that his behavior was being watched so closely and that what he was doing was being disrespectful to his wife in any way. So he acknowledged it, and all's well that ends well. So he promised her that he would work on it. But my advice to her too was, when you're faced with things that you don't necessarily understand, try to turn it into an educational moment, because it's too much stress. You're putting unnecessary burden and stress on yourself that you don't have to.
And ask those questions. Like, ask those questions first before I take it home. Right. And I'm going to worry about something more than what my client's worrying about.
Exactly, because his wife wasn't worried about it.
No. So yeah, I love that scenario, because I'm just thinking, I can't be so more worried about the client's issues than they're worried about it. And I have a super great supervisor. So shout out to Cicely if you're watching this. But she's like, are you working harder than your clients? And I'm like, ooh, that's a good question. So when I'm in sessions, or if I'm staffing something, or if I'm planning for a session, I always have to ask myself, am I working harder than what my client is working? Because if so, I need to take a step back and I need to let go so it doesn't lead me to burnout.
Right. And I think like that's even like an important lesson to kind of like, you can apply it in like a lot of different areas like in your life. Like, I know for one, like I used to be, sometimes like it would like get me upset when I would want something more than like another person, like for them, not for me, but for them. And then like I saw it as like, I just want the best for you. Like I care about you and I just want the best for you, which is okay. But I think that like, that again affects like your mental health. Like, it stresses you out. It puts you in a position where like you are a little bit more irritable, and you're having anxiety about the situation. And then like to apply it to this field, I know sometimes, we get clients that come in like every so often, like they come in like clockwork. Like, it's been 3 months. We know Mr. Brown is coming back in. Like, Mr. Brown is not a real patient. I'm not violating HIPAA. But, for example's sake, Mr. Brown, it's about time. It's almost November. It's getting cold outside. Mr. Brown, that's been homeless, he's been addict for years. He might start coming back around because we know this is about the time of year he gets admitted, for like the last 15 or so years. And it's almost pointless to be upset about what Mr. Brown is going through, because we know that this is a situation. If he wants better for himself, he will put himself in a position to do better, and we will help him. That's our job, is to support him. But until then, Mr. Brown, if he's nice and pleasant, we take him in with open arms. That's our job. We take him in with open arms. We treat him while he's here. And when he gets discharged, he gets discharged. And we'll see him next year when he comes back around, until he gets himself together. And that's it. So I do want to move the conversation to break the cycle, because we only do have a few minutes left. This has been a really great conversation, and I see in the comments people are enjoying the conversation. Aubrey Oliver is an LMSW. She's saying that she's really enjoying the conversation, especially with providing examples of self-care for burnout, which we're actually about to get into. Arita Caesar says hi. She says interesting conversation. So thank you everybody for commenting. Continue to comment. Please feel free. So as far as breaking the cycle, we kind of touched on this a little bit before, but like, how do you decompress after work? And do you have, since the beginning of your current position, do you notice that like it takes you a little bit longer to decompress after work, or is it a little bit easier for you to like kind of leave work at work and like just be you, only just you when you come home?
Okay, so I have two different scenarios.
Okay.
Because I work virtually majority of the week. And so at first I was struggling with entering back into my home space and just being like, still feeling heavy from the day. But before I enter, I used to just close my computer, enter in, and it be that. But now I take time to transition. So I'll play some music without words. So usually I think it's called like a lofi on YouTube, but I'll turn on those tunes, or I'll just scroll on my phone for like 30 minutes or so, just so I can have a smooth transition from work to home while I'm in my home, without just going straight from work to, okay, now I need to go do stuff in my house. I like to have that transition. It's a little bit easier when I go in person, because that transition happens when I get in the car and when I'm having my 45-minute drive back home. So I transition there. I'll listen to my music, listen to whatever podcast I want to listen to on the way home. And then I'm immediately into my self-care. So I take all of my clothes off from the day, and I'm getting in the shower. I'm doing my shower thing, moisturizing, putting on my pajamas. And that's just more so of a physical way that I decompress after work. And though some are like, oh, well, you just, that's what you're supposed to do. Well, not necessarily. I'm more mindful about it, that's my transition. I don't go straight into, oh, I'm going to eat dinner. I don't go straight into interacting and talking with those in my household. I transition physically first before I can transition mentally.
Yeah, I definitely I agree with that last part. People that live in my household know that I kind of have like two sides to me. Like I sometimes like, I'm very outgoing, very social. And then there are times where like I don't want to talk at all. So when I was working jobs where I would get off and it'd still be, daytime outside, or even if I pick up day shift and I come back and, it's still light outside, everybody's still awake when I get home. Sometimes I do not want to talk. I've been talked at, for the last 8 hours straight.
Mm-hmm.
I've been like flooded with so many like different people asking me for things and just talking. And I just need silence. So I think that what's helpful for me is being able to go like into my room and kind of like decompress, like you said, like, take your clothes off from the day, change into something like a little bit more comfortable. And then it's a little easier for me to decompress after the day with my actual schedule, because when I come home, everybody's already asleep. So it's quiet time. I don't have to hear a lot. If I'm still hungry, I'll make myself something to eat, sit downstairs for a while, shower, and then like I'll get ready for bed. But like you did say, like how it's sometimes like there's two scenarios. Sometimes there are days when I do come home and I'm still very much stimulated from the last 8 hours because, we do have very chaotic days at my job. So it's hard to transition from always being on go, always being on 10, on edge for 8 hours straight to having to come home and go to bed. So sometimes it does take longer for me to like decompress and get into like a zone because it did affect my sleep for a while. I wasn't able to fall asleep when I got home. I'm thinking, it's after midnight. Like I should be tired after the day. But when you start to think about it, it's like you've been at work for 8 hours. Like you might be tired, but like your mind is still kind of going. You got to give yourself a second to calm down. So I like to light candles. I love candles from Home Goods. If anybody's looking for a good place to get candles from, Home Goods has them, especially for the good prices. Light something that like smells good. It's like it brings my level of stimulation definitely down from like a 10 to like a 5. And then from there, maybe take some melatonin and like just get into a more comfortable mood. So that's kind of what I do to like when I decompress from like a long day, a long shift. I like quiet. Sometimes I like to socialize, again, if I do work during the day, but other times most of the time I like it nice and quiet. Just very
I think for Trinity it works because they're all adults now. I got 3 daughters and they're all young adults, and which works for me especially. But for her, she works second shift, and by the time she's home, we're all asleep. She doesn't have to worry about having to interact with anybody at home, so she will have her alone time. The whole house really she will have to herself. So it definitely works for her. For me, I think if you have the opportunity to be able to set your own schedule, your own work schedule, it's important. My schedule consists of my visits are usually in the late afternoon, bordering on evening. It depends on if it's a 1 hour visit with parents have with their children or a 2 hour visit. But then we also have a pre and a post visit. So a 2 hour visit really is 3 hours, and a 1 hour visit usually it's really 2 hours. So having to be able to set my own schedule and have a late afternoon or into early evening visits, or having to go to work because I physically go into the office in the daytime later than most people. So I've missed traffic. I've missed having to talk to people. Some people aren't morning people. I happen to be one. That took some transitioning for me because I'm used to being up and being at work and being, a morning person and saying, hey, good morning. Whereas now I get up in the morning, same time, and I'm in school. So I'm an online student. So I have that time where I can decompress before going to work, and think about what's that particular visit right before going in. And right after that visit, depending upon how heavy or how light the visit was, I'm able to decompress. So most of the people in my building are already gone home. So it's a quieter time after the visits. So for me, it works out. And if you can be able to schedule your work hours where you will have, some downtime before and after, definitely take advantage of it because it works for me. And coming home with you, Imani, I'm playing music. I do a lot of talking to myself too, to make sense out of something. So that's the time where I can literally talk out loud in the car to myself, play the music, get past that moment before I get home. I have enough time to get home and be decompressed.
Yeah. And I think it definitely sometimes it could be challenging because the way that you decompress, like when you want to talk to somebody, like say like if I'm coming in and like you see me for the first time in like maybe a few days and like you want to talk and I'm just like I don't want to talk, I'm so sorry. Like I do feel sometimes like I do feel bad, and then it kind of goes back to earlier, Imani, when you were talking about like the toolbox. I felt like that was a really good metaphor because you were saying that sometimes the tool that you're using now, it's helpful now, but like it might not be helpful like in the future, or like it's not, you can't use the same tool for every single thing. So I think that definitely kind of allowing that flexibility like in your self-care, and finding different coping mechanisms. Like I would tell my patients, different coping mechanisms or different tools that you can use, so that way you're not always relying on one. And then when that one doesn't work, then like you feel like, oh my God, I don't have anything. Like now I'm in like complete crisis panic mode and
Mhm.
everything. So there are times when, like I want to have I want to have a conversation about something outside of patients and people. Like that goes back to planning a trip. Like, what are we about to do this weekend? Like, are we going to go see family? Are we going to do this? I know I have to do this. I have to book a flight, this, that, and the third. Like, I know I have to go buy this for myself. So definitely, I think that's also like a good way to not only decompress from the day, but compartmentalize your day is allowing yourself to think of things that you need for yourself, like outside of the job. So
Yeah.
that way you add some structure, some organization, so that way you're not neglecting other parts of your life because you're not able to appropriately decompress from the workday.
Mhm.
So we are over time, but I do want to ask one more question. I wanted to know, how do you separate yourself from the job? So here in the comments, we have somebody. I'm so sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, so I'm just gonna try and pronounce your first name, Landiwe. She says, as someone who aspires to join the human services field, I'm really finding this conversation helpful. I never want to feel like I have nothing more to give ever. And this thought has definitely ran through my mind because as somebody that works in the field of mental health, and for people that work in the field of working with other people in general, human services, social services, mental health, psychiatry, all that, you definitely need a certain level of empathy. You cannot, I personally believe you cannot provide for other people if you are not going to be empathetic towards their situations.
Mhm.
If you are completely just kind of like black and white, like you don't see anything else, like you see a problem, you think of like the solution, and like that's it. You don't want to hear what they have to say. You don't want to hear about the experiences. You're probably working in the wrong field. I don't think working for people is for you. So, but the caveat with that is that sometimes people do try to take advantage of your empathy. People do, like, attach themselves to your heart, and like you want to be empathetic, but you also don't want to give your entire self to this job and drain yourself completely.
Mhm.
So how have you learned to keep who you are as a person? How do you preserve yourself, like, as your full person, as your whole self, from the job?
So I create not necessarily an alter ego, but two different people. There's therapist Imani, and then there's just Imani. And so I have to remember that therapist Imani can't get overly invested. That the people I'm working with, they're not my friends, they're not my family members, they're not somebody who I will have a relationship with outside of that space. So I have to treat that accordingly. Versus Imani can form relationships, would love to have those relationships, do care about people, but those don't overlap because sometimes the people who know Imani want to treat me like therapist Imani. And I always say, hey, look, and this happens all the time with dating. And I'm sure for those of you who are dating out there in the mental health field, somebody is you tell them you're a therapist and they're always like, well, I don't want you to psychoanalyze me. Look, I'm not on the job, so I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm not getting paid to do that. Please don't. I'm not going to. And so I try to separate the two. There has to be boundaries, and sometimes those boundaries don't feel good. Like you were saying earlier, Trinity, sometimes you feel bad, but the myth is that boundaries are supposed to feel good immediately. They don't feel good immediately. Sometimes they suck because you, as empathetic people, we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. So I'm thinking, as therapist Imani, if I have a client who is like, oh, well, can we hang out outside of therapy? The answer is going to have to be no. I know that we have this relationship here. I'm very glad that we are able to cultivate a relationship that you would like to see in your outside life. But here, I'm just your therapist. So that's not something that we can do. And keep those boundaries, because if we overlap, then everything's going to seem confusing. We're not going to be able to compartmentalize. Everything is going to be blurred. And now we're just seeing all gray. And I just like to say, we like to see gray, black, and white, and all the other colors, because
Right.
if we don't have no colors, we don't know which direction that we need to go in. And so if I see a client who is a blue person, and they're trying to fit in the crowd with some purple people, and be like, well, you in the wrong crowd. You trying to fit with the purples, and you not, and you a blue. So go
You're
with
right.
your blue and thrive with your blue. And if you want to enter into an environment with the purples, then you have to create a mindset to know that you're with the purples and you won't be a purple because you're a blue. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yes.
just knowing what environments to fit in and which where you can be truly yourself and where you may have to equip yourself a little bit more.
Right. Um, for me, separating myself from what I do, I think it's important to know what your particular program or what your particular profession, the ethical codes of those professions are. And
Yes.
usually boundaries is in any profession, and
Mm-hmm.
just being able to create boundaries, which when you're working with patients, when you're working with clients, it's very hard to maintain boundaries.
Yeah.
um, and as you practice more and more, it does become a little easier, but there's always that one client or family that you feel a little soft because whatever they're going through may trigger something from your past, or an experience that you a previous experience that you've had. So just maintaining boundaries is huge. I know, because of the type of business I work in the field and the program, that working with parents, it's a 6 month program. 6 months is a long time to see the same individuals rebond with their family members, learn different things about each other, and not develop some sort of a soft spot for them. You
Mm-hmm.
always wish them well, but I'm a few families in now that I've had to discharge, and I am thankfully so far that, I kind of set them on their way and just kind of let them know, you have my phone number. However, you
Mm-hmm.
can use it for this, this, and this. If you need me for any programs that the village may have that you're interested in, you can always use me as a referral. Give me a call. And I try to keep it at that, and just the language that you use and how you communicate with people definitely helps you set boundaries, but help them receive those boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to say that just know your profession, know your program, know the company you work for, know those policies when it comes to the ethical policies of those programs, and know what is expected of you when it comes to building relationships with your future clients.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with the both of you. Imani, like, just kind of growing up and finally, realizing that like psychology and mental health was my passion. With the relationships that I've formed since then, I I try not to, or I'm learning, I should say. I'm in the process of learning to not always give like the personal relationships in my life, trying not to, put on the therapist hat, because that's the hat I eventually want to put on.
Mm-hmm.
And with when I'm in that space of like trying to provide like, some type, or being able to talk to clients and like relate to like the patients that I'm working with, try not to put on the personal hat that I wear at home. And like you both said, like it definitely it can be difficult, but like establishing boundaries and the language, definitely like the language that you use, you can create like a professional level of being friendly, but you can't create like a friendly, or yeah, I guess like a friendly level of being like professional and stuff like that, but like just making sure that you stay like within that, inside that realm, and not coming out of that, and like and extending yourself in ways that like a, you're not going to be able to keep up with, and b, that it might come across as something that like it may not be. Like you don't ever want to like confuse the person that like, or the people that you're working with. So I know one struggle with me that I've come across with working like with patients is working with people with borderline personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that don't know, pretty much people with borderline personality traits, or the disorder, I feel like in ways I feel like it is just a diagnosis, and we should never treat people based off of a diagnosis.
Mhm.
Sometimes they are looking for I don't want to say this like in the wrong like context. I don't want to offend anybody, but they are looking for attention, and they do tend to cling on to people that are giving them attention because that's something that they need, that they feel that they need to be able to thrive, and they need the constant reassurance.
Yeah,
So
there's
when I first
validation. Mhm.
yes, constant validation and reassurance. So when I first started working with that, or working with people that were borderline, I couldn't really understand like the type of boundary that you needed to put up. So I would always like kind of give like the fullest extent of myself to them. And then I would always like be confused as to like, well, why are they always like seeking me out, like seeking to talk to me and kind of keeping my attention for 15, 20 minutes when I have to like go do something else. But I think, like I said before, having a certain level of empathy, because at the end of the day, we are still people. And I'm never going to treat somebody like I can't talk to you because you're borderline and all you want is my attention and all you want is my validation. And I can't sit here and talk to you for 30 to 40 minutes on end, telling you what I think that you need to do and telling you how you're such a great person. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is use very concise, very constructive language like, what do you think you should do? Helping that patient validate themselves creates a boundary so that way you don't also get overly involved with them and they don't feel the need to constantly involve you.
Yeah.
Because the last thing that I would want to do is become desensitized. And I think that like that's a definitely a conversation for another day because we can talk about desensitization all day. But I don't want to be desensitized. I want to be able to be a human and be able to relate to other humans. That's what I believe in. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's all about keeping boundaries, and I'm very glad that you both touched on that.
Yeah.
So, Jordan Rio says, "Hi everyone, hi Jordan." But we are just over an hour, and almost about to an hour and 20 minutes. So I want to go ahead and wrap it up here. So before we go ahead and close off, do you guys have any like last comments that you want to leave with people? Everything that we said today, even though this wasn't Honor Women's History Month, please feel free, man, woman, however you identify, whatever your gender preferences are, please feel free to take this from you. This is just experiences of Black women navigating through this field to, you know, kind of share like how we preserve our mental health. So do you guys have any last comments?
Yes, I would say to specifically to Black women, because that's who we're talking about, Black women and mental health. Take care of yourself. Make sure you're practicing self-care. Make sure that you are taking the necessary breaks and know that rest is a priority. Rest is the way that you can revitalize what you need to keep going. Fill up your cup. It's not selfish, it's self-care. And yes, I know I was talking specifically to Black women and mental health, but that goes to all people.
Yes.
Care, prioritize yourself. You're important. If you can't show up for yourself, then you can't show up for other people.
All right.
And I would just say the same things you tell your clients. You should live by those same things. If you're not going to live by them, there's no point in giving that same advice to your clients. You do have to take care of yourself, and you have to be present.
All right. Yes, and thank you, Taryn, for the final comment. That is my older sister right here. You know, we have the family on deck today. So yes, thank you so much for everybody that commented, liked, watched. Thank you so much. Again, Taryn, thank you for the comment. And we will see you guys again next Saturday for another episode of Black Mental Health. So until then, take care. Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.